Okay, so we've talked a lot about the crime rates in the United States, how that compares to crime around the world. Now we're going to look at what our response to that crime level has been. So over the course of time that the authors are looking at, we see violent crime down 40%, property crime down 30% in the last 20 years. The exception to this is drug crime. Drug crime has been on the rise since the 1970s. Excuse me. We've seen an increase in the number of offenses, arrests, budget for fighting these offenses. Then, as we excuse me, as we define more actions associated with drugs to be criminal, we have more criminal offenses to charge people with. We saw arrests in the system overall about 400,000 in 1982. On the other side of the war on drugs, we're up to about 2 million per year. The budget has increased over 500% since Reagan declared the war on drugs in the early 1980s. In some of my drug-related classes that I taught, I actually have an article from a Playboy that I found where it's a cover story too. It says that the real victim of Reagan's coming war on drugs will be the poor. I'd put the cover up, but I feel like I would get thrown off of YouTube for that and maybe have to talk to the HR people at Georgia State. So you have to trust me that was a headline article in a Playboy in the early 1980s in response to the changing political climate at the time. We've seen a massive expansion in our punitiveness, and then in conjunction the scope and the expenses of the criminal justice system. So during that war on drugs time period, really started by Nixon in the early 1970s, but he, for all of the bad things he did, he put a lot more money into treatment and prevention than any other president since. But that's not really the popular part of it. We see a lot more of the enforcement side. We see a push for that in the 70s and the 80s. Get tough on crime, just say no, those sorts of things. We see the rehabilitation failing, and again, sort of a swing from the due process era to the crime control era. We want to lock up these dangerous, irresponsible people, and the public mentality is that if they're in a situation that they're there by their own choice or their own bad decision making, which is not the case. We see a lot of sort of a confluence of talking head pundits, news reporters, politicians, and then people in the community as well that became sort of voices of the community, all pushing for the same thing. Focusing on this infrequent, highly sensationalized violence, street-level violence that was taking place, a lot of that around developing drug markets, which again were only so profitable because the prohibition made them profitable. During this time, we see a lot of funds moving away from things like social welfare programs and into things like crime control, jails, more police officers, more correctional officers. After about 10 to 15 years of this, you start to see this becoming the predominant political ideology, that people are not viable political candidates if they don't have this tough on crime mentality. This was never more evident than in the 1988 presidential election between Michael Dukakis and George H.W. Bush, Herbert Walker Bush, where during the campaign it was revealed that one of the people that had participated in Dukakis's weekend furlough program, named Willie Horton, committed more violent offenses while he was on basically a weekend release from prison. And that destroyed his campaign. Everything that person did while he was released from prison was basically attributed to the politician. And from that point, really through today, although it's sort of the freeze out is sort of cooling a little bit with people sort of understanding the cost of the system and in terms of economics and also the social costs. But since that period, it's been very, very difficult for any politician to even seem to be soft on crime. In terms of direct spending, this is a pretty clear chart. One side, when this all started, fairly low. On the front side, extremely high. So we see increases of 400, almost 700, over 500% of the system. It's an incredible amount of money and this is the only thing that really woke a lot of people up to this issue, was how much money we're spending on this. Yet in California, they spend more money on the prison system than on the higher education system. And Americans are tough on crime. We've always been tough on crime. 90 or 60% of felony defendants are convicted. Most have a plea deal to a lesser felony. Only about 2% actually go to trial. Of those that get convicted, 2/3 are incarcerated. You see about, depending on the year, 70% of them go to prison or jail. The prison population is down 300% since 1980, where it was 500,000 people, now it's over 2 million. The median sentence for a convicted felon is about 3 years. It's lower for the drug offenses, theft offenses, highest for homicides, but people still want more. The majority of Americans still think that the courts are too lenient, they're soft on crime. Again, part of that is the way the media focuses on. The media doesn't focus on the daily court dockets that sentence hundreds, if not thousands, of people to felony convictions. It focuses on maybe the one time that a judge offers a light sentence or offers an alternate sentence, or gives a sentence that is below what the community standards are. Now, in some cases, that's true. And like the instance in California where the judge sentenced an individual convicted of sexual assault to a very minor punishment, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking more about judges being afraid to offer a more tailored sentence because they're going to seem like they're being soft on crime, as opposed to situations where they shouldn't be. We've seen this play out in the militarization of the police. We've seen a couple of clips of this. SWAT team in Atlanta, they called the special unit the Red Dog Unit, which jokingly stood for rob every drug dealer. There's a fair amount of corruption in that unit. They had the Fugitive Gun Task Force in Baltimore. That's one I would encourage you to look up. The Fugitive Gun Task Force in Baltimore, where most of the officers on that unit ended up going to federal prison. We talk about violent crime, but target public order crime, property crime, minor offenses. We also only target people that the media and the general public views as criminal, which is, again, part of the problem that got us to where we're at now, where there's this association between who a criminal is and non-white community members. And a lot of people's perceptions, a lot of police perceptions, and that's very problematic towards bettering the situation that we have now between the police, the criminal justice system in general, and the community. And we see about 2 million arrests annually on these victimless crimes, low-level loitering, disorderly conduct, things like that, drunk in public, drug-related offenses. Less than 1 in 8 arrests are for index offenses. 10% are for violent offenses, 7% are for nonviolent index crimes. So, only about 17% are for index-related offenses. Everything else is the more minor stuff that the FBI catalogs. They don't really look into that much in terms of studying crime and why crime takes place. We have a very punitive court system, a mandatory minimum, 3 strikes laws. We talked about this in previous lectures. We have harsh sentences for really all offenses, especially drugs. Drugs are the most disproportional offenses. State drug inmates up 9%, made it 9% of the total population in 1985, up to 34% in 2004, so a full third of the people incarcerated. The federal inmates went up some, but not that much. Part of the reason was that is a lot of the federal cases were allowed to be prosecuted at the state level to avoid the federal government having to house them. More possession charges and distribution charges. Typically, only 4 out of 5 drug arrests are for possession. We've also seen a reduction in the application of the juvenile justice system. And we've seen increases in the chance of prosecution and conviction with more plea bargains, sort of due process model, trying to charge people with as many crimes as possible to get them to plead to as many crimes as possible. Again, let's look at the incarceration rate and how much that's gone up during this time period. 2.3 incarcerated in 2007, up from up another 500,000 from 10 years before that. We see the biggest increase from about the early 80s to the mid 90s. 300% growth from 1980 to 2007, so less than a 30-year period. We're looking at 300% growth. We've seen prison overcrowding, which creates very unsafe environments. Typically, state prisons are 10 to 20% overcrowded. Federal prisons are 30% over. Part of what that means is that sometimes they have to move inmates, which may not seem like anybody cares about that, but if you're convicted of a crime in Los Angeles and you're transferred to Idaho, how is your family supposed to come and visit you? Again, it's difficult to argue for the plight of the prisoners, but I'm not running for any political office, so I will do it. You can't have that. You can't have situations where people can't see their families. They're being structurally prevented from doing that because you're affecting morale, and prisoners with low morale are going to make bad decisions. And when prisoners make bad decisions, it's bad for everyone involved in the incarceration process. We saw 1,000 new jails created from 1980 to 1995. Some places built jails and never used them. Colorado and Oregon had this problem. They built the jails. When they built the jails, by the time they finished them, they didn't have any money to staff them. The one in Oregon has been used a few times for filming locations. But this happened in more places around the country where they just ran out of money. State prison population is still growing, 2% annually. About 7 million Americans are under some form of state supervision at any given time, whether that's incarcerated or under parole or probation. 6.4% of Americans will go to prison at some point in their lifetime. If you are an African American male, that number goes up to about 33%. You also see a very high recidivism rate. 25% return within 6 months, 40% within a year. A full 2/3 go back within 3 years. Most of that is for, so 47% of released felons are reconvicted and 41% are reincarcerated within 3 years. A lot of what happens when someone is on parole and they commit a new offense, instead of going through the whole court system, they'll simply revoke their parole and put them back for the remainder of their sentence. The other issue is prisons are a learning environment. The line from the movie Blow, where he says he went in with a bachelor's degree in marijuana and came out with a PhD in cocaine, that's a real thing. It's called con college for a reason. People learn skills, they talk. There's nothing else to do when you're incarcerated, so you talk. Bullshit. What are you in for? Things like that. We also see the same people offending. 3/4 of all felony defendants had a prior arrest. 50% had a prior violent arrest. 25% had 10+ arrests. Again, we're trying these social processes of crime is concentrated in a small subset of the population. 6 in 10 felony defendants have a prior conviction. 40% have a prior felony conviction. So again, it's not people that are new to the system. It's the same people over and over again, and we're not doing anything as a government to address that. Again, talked about the issues, what this looks like when we break it down by race. We see a vast overrepresentation in the incarcerated population of non-white community members, particularly with African American males. Again, 25 to 29, 18% are behind bars today. So at present, when you're watching this video, 18% of African American males aged 25 to 29 in the United States are incarcerated. 30% in a lifetime. 50% of African American males aged 18 to 35 have an active criminal justice status. So that means they're incarcerated or they're on probation or parole. Half. System is expanding. We don't really, I mean, it's tied directly to that sort of get tough on crime policy, but we were always tough on crime. There's not, we created all this new drug crime to punish, but it hasn't been effective. we've seen a lot reduced spending on social welfare programs. That's something we're trying to get back to. That's one of the big pushes in this defund the police idea, is to put that money back somewhere else in the community. So we're not just pulling resources away from the police. We're changing what they have to do. See the conservative agenda, the anti-crime agenda, increased access to crime-related information that people have. They focus on that. They get sort of in this feedback loop where we're only going to watch these things that show these people doing horrible things. We've seen a lot more activism, grassroots at the beginning, things like Mothers Against Drunk Driving, but now we see it from people on television that are there to sell books, there to sell ad space. They don't really care about what's happening. They're there for their own agenda. Okay, so again, look at this sort of increase in spending. At the same time, the system is sort of needed. The crime's going down, but the spending's going up. It's one of the major sort of fallacies and things that makes it hard for people to understand the criminal justice system when that's going on. So again, think about that as we look at some of the other actions that people in the system and the system itself have taken during this time period.